Hi, my name is Brian, and I'm the High Pop Professor. And today I would like to call attention to an issue that I've noticed just recently in the past few weeks regarding eBay and their value comps for their collection items. Up until a few weeks ago, in general, eBay did a pretty good job when you added items into your collection under the eBay sort of umbrella. You have a chance you can take items that you've won as an auction and put them in there, and they will do a reasonable job tracking the value of your collection, making sure that the values are pretty much up to date with recent comps, and that's wherein lies the issue here. The whole reason why I was sort of doing this, I had a couple of hobby goals for this year. I made a video about that, and I've done a pretty good job sort of ticking some of those goals off. I've checked off acquiring a couple of these Tony Gwynn cards, made a few videos about that. Mag Pro labels, check, got some of those underway. Still making more, but we're doing it. Some more hobby collaborations, check. Went ahead and did a fun video with Greg over at Midlife and Iconic Al, my brother. And so we're doing stuff, you know. One of the other things I got some of these air tags for my my Apache cases of slabs, check. One of the things I wanted to do though was I wanted to get insurance on my collection, and in order to be able to do that, I haven't checked that one off the list yet because I kind of need to have some good reasonable value. You know, it's on me as the collector to you know, have a good detailed spreadsheet of what I have, what the current value is for this year, and then you update it every year, and that way you kind of know, you know, what you're paying insurance for. And so that's where this comes in. So I felt like before I could get that insurance piece taken care of, well, I need to enter my collection in. And so it seemed like eBay just seemed like one of the easiest ways to go about doing that, because a lot of it's like automated for you. You can go ahead and download and just, you know, export your data into a PDF or into a spreadsheet, and it's all right there. So they make it pretty convenient. So this issue that happened a few weeks ago, I started to notice that the value of some of my cards and my whole collection started to sort of wildly fluctuate. And that shouldn't happen. Generally, it should be, you know, I'm not saying it won't go up or down. Obviously, that's what cards do. They go up, they go down. I get it. Particularly ultra modern is where you have more volatility. But, you know, a lot of the stuff I'm looking at, these 90s refractors and inserts and, you know, things like that, yeah, it'll change, but we're talking some pretty big swings. And I didn't really understand why until I dug a little deeper. And so one of the nice things that eBay allows you to do is under any given card, you can sort of, you know, when you scroll through in your collection, you click on the card that you see, it'll bring up your card and, you know, what you had, what you paid for it, what it's now worth, the percentage change, you know, whether it increased or decreased a certain percentage, including green up arrows and red down arrows. And then if you keep scrolling down, they give you an option to see what some of the comps they're using for that price, what they are. Okay, and then they'll look at the last 90 days and they'll see what has sold, which, you know, if there have been a few sales of that card, then great, that's fantastic. A lot of these cards though, if they don't have sales, okay, maybe it's just going to be stagnant and it'll just hold the value until it gets some data. And so sometimes that's the case as well. The troubling thing that I've noticed over the last 3 weeks is that eBay, for some reason, they must have changed their algorithm somewhat, or changed the way that they have determined what constitutes a valid comp. And I am getting at least, just all kinds of mistakes all across the board, really bad values, ones that are way too high, ones that are way too low. And of course, some that just kind of luck out and kind of turn out to be just about right, but they're taking really bad comps on both ends of the spectrum. So I wanted to do a little bit of a dive into this problem and just on comps in general and how we have to be careful. You know, the more I'm getting into this, the more I'm realizing that, you know, comps are not the be all end all. I'm starting to put less and less stock into what comps even are, because so much is changeable So much is going to vary day by day, week by week, and you just can't you can't rely too heavily on these. It's a guideline, okay, but really not much more. Don't view them as a hard and fast rule. View them as a very loose guideline. So before we get into this eBay thing, I do want to point out, there are ways you can purchase something as a best offer, and eBay, it will show you that a card had sold, but maybe the value is crossed out. And when that happens, you can't always see what the best offer sales price was. And so I'm going to put a little plug in here for 130 Point. So 130 Point is a website that's free. You can sign up for it. And if you search for those cards, they do have completed listings and sale prices or recently sold items. They go back further than 90 days. But also, if something's sold at a best offer, they have the actual sale price in there. Now, that won't say that the buyer paid necessarily. It won't tell you the transaction went through, but it will tell you what the agreed upon price was, which I think is useful and helpful. So in a perfect world, in an ideal world, you're looking to purchase something, you want to get a reasonable idea of what it's worth, maybe at a show. Okay, well, ideally, you would take a bunch of the last completed sales, and some of them might be higher, some of them might be lower, and but ideally, let's say you had 10 recent sales. Let's say this is a really easy to comp card, 10 sales. What you might want to do is, the dealer might be looking at the highest of those comps. The buyer might be looking at the lowest of those comps. And really what you probably should do is either look to the middle ones, or if you really can, probably a better way than just taking the middle comps would be, I would kick out the top and lowest sales. And maybe if you had 10 of them, kick out the 2 top and then kick out the 2 lowest and average the 6 together, maybe putting a slight greater weight towards the ones that were most recent. Something like that. And the reason why is, so there's one card, there's a couple cards that I want to use as sort of case studies for this. And I'm going to turn the camera around in a second. We'll go through those case studies. But basically, I want to show what's happening with eBay and why they've gotten terrible over the last 3 weeks. Because it turns out they are not using good, comparable card sales for the values that they're telling us for these cards. And that's a huge problem. I know it's probably not just me. I sort of thought that, with technology, generally technology tends to improve as time goes on. And I figured, well, maybe after a week or two, they'll go ahead and, fix the glitch, and they'll go ahead and correct it and bring back the good. They haven't done it yet. And I haven't heard anyone else discussing this. And maybe I'm one of the few that actually uses eBay as a collection tracker, value tracker. But anyway, it's a problem. So I want to walk through a few examples where eBay completely missed the mark on their declared value, on their comps, whatever, for completed sales. And we'll look at some that are way high, some that are way low, and we'll talk about how they can maybe go through and fix this. So let's run the camera around and look at some cards. Okay, so let's start with these first couple. These are 97 Pinnacle certified. We have some mirror blue, mirror red, and this is the certified stars subset. And just amazing, gorgeous cards with amazing, gorgeous shine. Look at these. The issue is that eBay, when you're looking at these kinds of completed sales, it really can't tell the difference between something like a Pinnacle certified mirror blue and a 97 Pinnacle totally certified platinum blue that's numbered out of 1,999. And that's a problem, because if you take that kind of a comp, eBay thinks the last sale of this card was $3.50. And that's not cool. That's not accurate. But that's what it's doing. That's what it's doing when it factors this in to its algorithm, its calculation. And by the way, the same kind of thing happens with the 96 certified. Here's a 96 certified mirror red. Just recently acquired this one. And with this card, it likes to confuse this. And as one of its last comps, it takes the regular red, not the mirror red, but the regular 96 Select certified red parallel, and views that sales price as a comp for this mirror red. And so big difference there in print run. This is a print run of 90, whereas the print run for the regular reds are, I think, 1500. Neither are serial numbered, but still, that's a huge disparity. So you gotta be really careful when it comes to this kind of stuff. All right, moving along. Next example that we have here is a card that I purchased. I actually got this one last year, and this is a 97 Donruss Signature Millennium Marks, Greg Maddux. And I sent this one to get graded myself. Now I can tell you that this card, ungraded, should be somewhere in the neighborhood of, well, I spent $175 on this one, which I was really pumped about it because it's a great specimen. It's a great mint copy, and it's the signature is nice and bold. You don't always see that with these kind of cards, and so really pumped to add this one to my PC. And so the interesting thing is, though, whether you're looking at Market Movers, Card Ladder, or whatever, you might notice that there was a recent sale of this exact card, raw card, for $37.75. So what's going on there? Because the fact is, these algorithms, these computers don't understand. They don't know that the card that sold for $37, well, the entire background had been faded away, like it had been sun bleached, and the autograph is so faded you can barely even see it anymore. And so for those reasons, it doesn't surprise me too much that, it's sold for an 85% discount or whatever. So the point is, looking at two recent ungraded sales of this one, we have that $37.75. Another one sold as a buy it now for $299.99. So we have a $300 raw sale, a $37.75 raw sale. Where does that put a value of something like this? That's a PSA Mint 9 Auto 10, and it's a Pop 4 with 0 higher. So I don't know. Well, eBay values this at $153. That's what eBay says this is worth. Because, $153 is kind of right between, $300 and $37.75. So that's what their calculated supposed value is for this card. Now, in reality, if a card that looks like this kind of eye appeal, this kind of condition, with this kind of a condition-sensitive card, if it's selling for $300 ungraded, I have to think that as a Mint 9 Auto 10, probably, I might estimate this at being like $350, something like that. But the fact is, eBay is very far away from that, down at $150, $153. So again, they kind of they missed the boat here. They dropped the ball. And part of it's not their fault. Like, that $37.75 is a valid price. It's an actual sale price that happened for this actual exact card. And I don't really blame them for that, but this is part of the reason why, if you have multiple comps, you get rid of the outliers. You throw out the highest, you throw out the lowest values, and just look at those middling values. And again, focus on the middle, average the middle ones, and again, weight it a little bit more towards the most recently completed sales. So that's my suggestion for that. Let's look at another example or two. Speaking of mid-90s certified Maddux autographs, we have this card. Beautiful card from 96, Leaf Signature. This is the extended series, and this card, well, again, eBay places this value at $275 for this card, which, doesn't sound unreasonable. I can tell you that that's probably okay for an ungraded version of this card. And I will just come right out there and say I spent way more on this card. I paid up. In fact, I think I probably was the highest sale, the highest comp for this card probably ever created. And I'm okay with that. In fact, I'm very happy with this card. This is in an SGC 9.5 Auto 10. And I don't know how many there are that are graded that high, but there can't be too many. I can tell you that. And again, the value that they're telling us for $275, I will come right out there and say that I spent $445 on this card, which is a lot higher than $275. And here again, if you look at these completed sales, it doesn't even show that there's any valid sales comp data for this card other than what the sale of this was last year, but it was over 90 days old, so it's not going to show up. So if you actually just go into completed listings, see, I think one of the problems that has happened here is that eBay changed their algorithm a few weeks ago, and one of the ways that they've changed it is that in some ways they've broadened it to find more things, and in some ways they've narrowed it. One of the ways they've narrowed it is that they only now look for the correct grade of what you have. Which, I mean, yeah, I guess that's, you don't want to get the wrong value for the wrong grade. So I see the, thought process in that. But they've also now expanded the sets they're looking at, which is a bigger problem, I think. And we'll tell you why in a second. So it doesn't have any other comp data for this. But if you look at completed listings, hey, you know what? There was a BGS 8.5 Auto 10 that just sold last month for $405. So if a BGS 8.5 Auto 10 sells for $405, then a SGC, that's what this is, 9.5 Auto 10, well, all of a sudden that $445 price I pay doesn't seem all that outlandish. Maybe even upwards of $500 wouldn't be unreasonable for an entire grade bump up to a Mint Plus Auto 10 for something like this. But the problem is, again, eBay is not valuing it at $450 or $500. They're valuing this at $275 for some reason, and they don't even show their work. They don't have anything to justify that, other than at some time, long time ago, maybe an ungraded copy sold for around that, which, yeah, is reasonable. And so these are problematic. Sometimes it's valuing them way too low and missing things sometimes. And we'll look at the most egregious example of ones that they're valuing way too high. Okay, so here's a beauty. This was a 93 finest refractor, Greg Maddux. This was my Grail card for all of 2023. Really, really pleased with this card. And one of these in a Mint 9, which is what this card is, just sold recently on eBay, and it sold for $12.50. And that's awesome. That's great. That doesn't really shock me too much. That's that's to be expected. That's a 93 finest refractor and a PSA 9. The problem is that this sale of this 93 finest refractor in a PSA 9, well, eBay looked at this and it decided that, you know what, this is also a PSA 9 finest refractor for Greg Maddux. And it views this now, while this is a 97 gold refractor, not even the embossed kind, no, just the gold refractor. It takes that sale of the $1,200 for this card and uses that as a valid comp for this card. And so it currently values this card at $1,250, $1,250, which is about $1,000 too high. So sometimes they're calling these cards, whatever it was, $3 for this, which is silly, or it was the blue rather. And they're calling this one $1,250. And by the way, they did the exact same thing for this 99 finest PSA 9 gold refractor. Yes, so what the heck is going on? Again, like I said, they are mixing their signals so badly that if it's the finest refractor, it's the same type of card in the same PSA 9 grade, then the year doesn't matter because all refractors are the same, right? So I'd like you to beware of this issue because I don't know if anyone's pointed this out yet, aside from me. I haven't seen anyone say anything about it, but this is a problem. I happen to know about what my cards should be, valued at, so I can put a reasonable value down on a piece of paper. But if I didn't have a good memory, or if I'm brand new to the hobby and getting in, and I don't really know the difference between these, and I'm using something like this generated by an algorithm that's ill-informed, I'm going to get myself into trouble. So this is a little PSA out there for y'all, public service announcement, that is, PSA, to be wary of these supposed comp values or the way that eBay is currently valuing their items in their collections, because right now they've got to fix this problem. They got to go back to how it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, because this is all brand new issue that has cropped up. And well, I just wanted to let people know about this, because is it just me? Am I the only one noticing this? Anyway, that's all I really had to say today. Thanks for watching.